absolutely hammered it down last night, and the wind picked up at about 3 in the morning. It's still a little bit torrid, but there are some gaps in the clouds, so there's a strong chance of an interesting sunrise. It's on and off raining still. I'm just bracing myself, drinking some coffee before I go and explore the sand dunes at Luskentyre beach. I'm not looking forward to this, but I am. What a blustery morning. That was some proper run and gun photography. Every direction there were rainbows springing up, beautiful light on the mountains, amazing lead-in lines in patterns in the sand. Fantastic. The beautiful conditions weren't letting up either. I had to tear myself away. All of my images blurred into one. I couldn't really remember any separate compositions that I'd been working on. It was that frantic. So technique-wise, I took the scattergun approach to today's photography. With all this wind, it was very much spray and pray. That being said, I did try some creative techniques. I really liked the way that long exposures looked. They were really ethereal and atmospheric. But when I zoomed in on the mountains, they weren't sharp at all. At first I was going to embrace this and just accept a slightly soft image and sharpen it in post-production, or just accept that it's a bit of an impressionist image. But in the end I decided I wanted the best of both worlds. I took one shot with a fast shutter speed to get everything sharp, and then I added an ND filter and dragged the shutter to create motion in the water and in the sky. You never know whether this is going to work, but hopefully they'll blend at the end in Photoshop.
That's hailing. That's not rain. That is bloody hail. Yep. Oh. Hail and rain. Nice cold mixture. Just what you need.
If shooting in the wind and rain on Luskentyre looks chaotic, you should have a go at editing images from a morning like this. In the space of a couple of hours, I'd taken almost 600 images,
many of them with lens shake, and sorting through them was a real mission. In this image, raindrops on the front element were my main adversary. In the end, I composited 3 images to make this photo. I selected a frame with the most drama in the sky as a base image, and then I had to use 2 images to get a sharp foreground and to minimise the smudging made by a raindrop as it made its way down the front of my lens. The resulting image is just okay. I like the foreground patterns in the sand, but the sky lacks any real interest. Disregarding the unsuitable conditions, I threw caution to the wind, and I even tried some long exposures lasting several minutes. Although this image isn't going to win any awards for technical perfection, I don't think it matters all that much here. The way the light falls means that the forms are distinct enough to make for an interesting image, and one could easily put the lack of clarity down to atmospherics rather than any mistaken technique. Generally, I like to sit on compositions, tweaking them as the light develops, but all this goes out of the window when a rainbow shimmers into existence. I find these fleeting visitors a challenge. I'd love to be able to ignore them, but I always stop what I'm doing and recompose. Again, the wind was the biggest challenge here. This long exposure isn't sharp when you zoom in. Of course, the composition isn't amazing, but if I was back in those conditions now, I'm not sure I would have done much better. I'm interested to see this one in print. It may well work, as long as you don't look too closely. When left to my own devices, I almost always shoot in portrait. I just understand how your eye tracks through a scene when there is more room to move up and down. However, at one point, the sweeping beach of Luskentyre and the way the dynamic light fell left me with no option but to shoot in landscape. I like this shot. I love how the sunrise bleaches in from the right-hand side of the frame, and there's an almost perfect blue-yellow colour contrast between the 2 hemispheres of the photo. For this panorama, I blended 2 shots to make the final image. One at a faster shutter speed to get the seaweed, sand and the dark headland as sharp as possible, and the other where I dragged the shutter for a couple of seconds to blur out the waves. It's easy to say in hindsight, but back at the computer editing, I think perhaps it would have been better to lean into conditions rather than to fight them. I do like images made with intentional camera movement, but it never occurs to me when I'm out in the field. I played with this scene post hoc in Photoshop, and a small amount of selective directional blurring makes for a nice effect. Not a technique that I would usually employ, but it's sometimes fun to explore a little while editing. What do you think about this? Let me know in the comments which version of this scene you prefer. I left Luskentyre recording my thoughts about the morning shoot as I went. On the whole, I was glad to be leaving this part of Harris behind. I like this style of move, shoot, move photography, but the morning had been a little chaotic for my state of mind right then. Shooting in every different direction, I couldn't remember any one composition that I had taken, and I hoped for a more measured afternoon on this, my last full day on Harris. So I drove west towards Kepperval. I had finally dropped into the sweet spot in terms of mentality. The first few days of a trip bring with them a ton of mental resistance. Of course, there is the war of art where you struggle against self-doubt and force yourself to take photos, but adapting to new routines is also difficult. It takes a while to do away with your complex home routines and adapt to a simpler mode of existence. Going on vacation gives you this to some measure, but the effect is amplified when you're camping. With these photo adventures, all the intricate edifices that I've built on the base of Maslow's pyramid fall away, and a new pattern of being takes shape. Plan photography, take photos, set up camp, eat, offload footage, clean my gear, plan more photos, make more photos, sleep, wake up, repeat. Although as I left Luskentyre, I was craving my preferred style of measured, slow build-up photography, this morning's brutal and elemental shoot was the key that allowed me to relax and find my rhythm on this trip. This was my 3rd day on Harris and my 5th full day of travel. But finally I wasn't forcing anything, and I found my creative flow here on Luskentyre. If you would like to see the rest of the photos I took on the beach, consider following me on social media. I'll post these shots as I edit them in the coming months and years. Next week's episode is my last full day on Harris, but I get some really good and some less than ideal photography conditions to see me off. I'll see you then.